Hello everyone, I'm Silverraptor. Welcome back to another deck building video where I am again joined by the illustrious pro Razzman. Hello Razzman.
Hello, what's up?
So this time around, instead of taking what my viewers have been requesting on my channel, we're going to take some of decks that your viewers have requested. And this one deck that people have requested, according to what you told me, was a Redfor Marines deck. Is that right?
Yeah, it is, which was a bit interesting because I played it before, but I think I never really made a sort of deck building video or something along those lines, so I assume that people want some more insight on the deck.
Yeah, see what is in the deck. Another thing that I wanted to throw out there, especially with the Marines, is that you don't need to have sea lanes to really play this deck because you still get lots of veterancy for different areas, and you get more infantry and more aircraft. So
It
yeah.
is a bit like it's a bit similar to a Marines or mech deck, as in you're very infantry focused, but the extra plane slots can of course be very useful as well.
I guess I would say if I was to classify a Marine deck, if you're not doing naval, would be that it's a mix between being a mech and motorized deck with a little bit of airborne thrown in there. Is that about accurate?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Alright.
The one of the big disadvantages of Marines is, of course, that it's the only specialization that basically takes planes away from you. Like,
Oh god.
Yeah. The selection of planes is not, when you're playing Marines, is not always that great. Every other specialization has access to literally every plane, so that's a bit awkward sometimes.
That does make a little bit of sense because as a Marine deck, you're imagining planes taking off from aircraft carriers and the like, so I guess that could make sense.
Yeah, I think that was also the rule for planes, as in only planes that can take off from aircrafts, from the ships and shit, have access to or are accessible to the Marine specialization.
Right. So this time around, instead of us making the deck together, because it just ended up where I'm just like, oh my god, Razzman's such a awesome player that what he's saying must be gospel and truth. We decided to swap this around where we both. Well, you already have a Redfor Marines deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did not. So I just decided to make my own, go through the units, pick out what I thought was best. And so we'll start off in the logistics tab. I'll tell you what I picked, and then you'll tell me what you picked and why, and we'll compare and see why we picked what we picked. Sound good?
Yep.
All right. First off, I grabbed the fob, which was a lot harder than it should normally be because there's just so many fobs, and it's basically which flag do you want to fly? Isn't that right?
Yeah. I think they even used. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but there are some fobs in the game that, in the in-game model, use the wrong flag, which is kind of funny. But I'm not sure if it's still the case.
You mean like on the side of a building that had the wrong flag model?
Yeah. Or the flag is inverted or something.
I remember that.
There used to be some instances. I have honestly no idea if that's still the case.
I remember that. That was funny. I guess what we should do is just talk about the supply, and I've got 2 land supply vehicles in this deck. The first I got were the SA-150 KPIs, though really any 15-point truck would do. They are basically could do the same. And so I just picked those because they look like the most interesting of the vehicles. It's my personal preference of what I liked their look.
Unfortunately, you don't get any. The 15 points are unfortunately the biggest supply trucks you can get, and those are, all of them are literally stat copies of each other, so it doesn't make any difference which one you take.
Yeah, and of course the helicopter supply, they're all crap, so I didn't get any of those. But I did get a card of MTPLBs because of their amphibious nature, so I could get them across rivers and stuff or hard to reach places since I don't have helicopter supplies. Did you get any amphibious supply trucks?
No, I only got one supply truck, a card of supply trucks, because most of the time you're never gonna run out because you can obviously refill them. And when you're playing a mixed red 4 or blue 4 deck, you don't get a lot of activation points. So I really want to save as many as possible.
All right, that is interesting. I'll see how the MTPs work. I might swap them out or later. But as sticking with our theme, I'm keeping what I've got. So what supply truck did you get? I know it doesn't really matter, but I'm just curious.
I got the FAP because I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's the first one in the list. That's I think that was the sole reason as to why I took it.
The FAP. Okay. Yeah. For CVs, I got 2 CVs. The first one I got was actually the BY50 Chinese boat CV.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like this one. Being it's even though it has poor stealth, it has small size. It's pretty fast, amphibious, and I've actually taken sea sectors completely with it instead of using ships, and that's been kind of fun to do. And the what I did is I got an infantry CV. I got the Jiwi bands and MI8s, and the reason why I picked Jiwi bands is because of all the CVs. They had the greatest firepower, and I got them in a helicopter for mobility.
Okay. Well, I took the UAC, just any cheap that you get 6 per card of. I would have taken also the boat cheap, but you get only 4 per card, and it can be a little low because sometimes depending on who you play with, they may not have a lot of CVs, and I just want to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And for my infantry CV, I took the the Soviet ones in the Ka-29. First of all, even though the MG on the North Korean infantry says it has higher define, also obviously more accuracy. In general, it is not as good as a PKM because it has a much shorter burst length, meaning it's a lot worse when your squad is panicked. But even that's not really an issue. The MI8 is just, but the rockets are just not really particularly great. So I took the Ka-29 TV, which while it costs 40 points, it is very, very useful support helicopter, as like the rocket pods are like actually really strong, and these 1HE rockets on the Mi8 are most of the time not really worth it.
Yeah, I see your point of
So,
view, but I'm not using the
what-
Mi8. Oh, sorry, what?
Yeah, what you could do though, if you could also take the Yugoslav CV in the Gazelle helicopter, which honestly the double Browning is probably gonna be more effective at some point because it's surprisingly effective against other helicopters, and it's also a lot smaller, a lot faster, and it's very small, although it only has 4 HE. And this squad actually gets a really, really good MG.
Yeah, the problem is I never want to bring in a CV in a 4 health helicopter.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. I picked the GUE band and the Mi8 purely because it was cheaper. I did toy with the Ka-29, but I'm just like, 40 points extra. That's 140 points per CV infantry. I'm kind of low on CVs with having only 4 boat trucks and 3 of these infantry helicopters, so I wanted to cut down the CV price just a bit. So that's why I picked the GB band. Alright, time to go to the best part, the infantry. Do you want to start off or should I?
Sure, well, first and foremost, I have Morskaya Pagoda 90s in the Ka-29 TV. Just to have the sort of flexible infantry and like all-round infantry in a helicopter first and foremost, and second of all, the Ka-29, as I said, is a very, very useful fire support helicopter. So there will be plenty of situations where maybe when I'm attacking a town, I very quickly need some fire support or something, so that will come in handy. And if you manage to keep your Ka-29s alive after they're using your rockets, you'll end up with 2 or 3 at once at some point while calling these in, and if you can keep resupplying them without getting them killed, they can really do a lot of damage over the course of a game.
That's fairly interesting. The helicopter that I picked was actually the Spetsnaz Elite in the Mi-24Ds, because I don't know, these Mi-24Ds have actually served me pretty well when I've been playing Wargame. They're at elite status. At elite status, the Fleta missiles can fairly hit about 50% of the time. That Yak gun can definitely mow down infantry, no problem. So, yep.
Well, that's why I have the FJB-40 in the Mi-24D as well. My second slot.
Yeah. I don't know. the Strellis 3s, even though they have 50% accuracy, the 3 AG power, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's not particularly great against planes, but keep in mind it has it has 2 seconds lower reload time, so it's actually surprisingly effective against helicopters. And
Okay.
they're just very useful to have on flanks, because while they're not really great at anything, they are good enough for most of the stuff on flanks and stuff, or in openers. They can hold off a transport helicopter of the opponent or something along those lines when in a town. They're just nice to have, I think. And with 7 slots, you do have the space to take such a unit in that may not always be very useful, but in certain situations it can really be very, very helpful or annoying to your opponent.
That is fair, but I think I'll just stick with my Spetsnaz, the ultimate infantry killers. I just need to be careful of the point cost when bringing them in. But anyways, moving on. The next infantry that I got were the 2 cards of Lu Zuandi 90s, because comparing the stats, and keep in mind I was just doing the stats, didn't try out your mod thing to check the inner stats, but they seem to be the best kind of infantry compared to the rest, and the VSD 90s with the autocannons just gave me a bit of like mechanized support role as well, and I just felt that it was a good combination.
Yeah, I used to run them as well, but I actually ran out of infantry slots, so I swapped them out again. I don't have them at all, but they're certainly a very, very good choice. The CSC-90 is as well an excellent transport for those. What I have really only one ground-based squad that has good anti-tank weaponry, and that is the Finnish Special Forces. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name right now. The XA-180 with the Apelas. And for my grinding infantry, I instead take 2 cards of Modschützen and the 5-pointer up-vetted. Because for the price of 1 Lushan D90 squad in the CC90, I can get 2 squads of Modschützen, while they obviously don't necessarily fulfill the same role, as in the CC90 obviously being a fire support vehicle, and the Lushan D90 also covering as the heavy anti-tank weapon. Modschützen, especially when you can get them on a lead, are just so incredibly cost efficient. And the Lushan D90, while they're good against tanks, the 21 AP and 60% accuracy, it doesn't quite cut it for me. Especially against heavier tanks, they'll only do like 1, maybe 1.5 damage. So that's why they're mostly medium and IFV medium tank and IFV killers, but they've been a bit lackluster, which is why I also before that took only 1 card of them.
Well, what a coincidence is I also have 2 cards of Modschützen.
Yeah, they're just top notch.
They are really good infantry. One of the best, I think, on the Redfor side. And what I have them different is because since I couldn't really get anything better than just a heavy machine gun on what they were going in, I got the Modschützens in the SPW 70s. And I got, because they're wheeled, they could get to the line faster, so they're basically more of my response unit or get to a line more critically, whereas my Lu Zuandi and the tracked ZSD-90s come with a bit more fire support kind of infantry, and they basically function kind of the same roles, just more of how more urgent I need them and how much firepower I need. And in between, because I also got 1 card of Marin... I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's the Yugoslavia shock train unit, the Monarcha Pez, I think is what it's called. And it's just like a good kind of another middle ground. It's basically the Modschützen equivalent tracked, where they're in the OT M60 PBs, because they are still fairly good, looking at their stats. And they have a more lighter fire support, but still double recoilless rifles with double machine guns on top as well is a pretty good combination, I think.
Yeah, the ODM 60 PP certainly is very good. Well, what I have for my 2 remaining slots is for 1 Conquer's M in the BTR 70, considering looking at the access, looking at the tanks we have access to, I think we need every bit of heavy anti-tank weaponry that we have access to. And then I also have, and it's mostly for openers, the 15-point Finnish fist squads, the Raskasin Korima or something like that. The 16 AP 1400 meter fist squads on veteran.
Oh, that's interesting. So you got a fire support guy.
Yeah, it's not really for fire support because they have only 7 rounds per minute. It's mostly just for being in a defensive position in a town, and in openers when you can just reach the town before your opponent in certain places, you can just unload them and they'll deal with the enemy fast transports approaching. So it's gonna really slow the opponent down in these situations.
Yeah.
It's more like you could say like a tech infantry squad that will be useful in certain situations, a bit like the FGB, but not always. But again, since we have so many slots, I think you can't fit these type of squads in there.
They are basically keep enemy infantry away from this town units.
Enemy infantry, enemy light vehicles. Congress them are obviously very good against vehicles, but they only have 6 missiles, and sometimes you want to purposefully turn them off because you need the weapon, the missiles against a tank, and not necessarily want to kill light vehicles with it, etc.
Mm-hmm. Well, my last card is actually the Conquer Them as well for exactly that reason, but we need the tank killing power. I didn't get them in the BTR 70s. I got them in the MT LBVs just to cut down the cost so I could bring these guys in at 30 points instead of 40. That's really the only difference.
Keep in mind you only get 6 of them, or if you upbet them, only 4 of them. And usually you only buy them 1, maybe 2 per side, so the extra 10 points are not going to be gonna make a huge difference, but I think it can really make a huge difference depending on how fast they can come in. Like once you get hold of a town for a while, you maybe sometimes desperately need Congress M to keep the town or something, or in an opener when you get the town at the start but the enemy might attack it very early, you definitely want those Congress M in there as soon as possible. And sure, you pay 5 points just for the KPVT, and ideally you'd want a 10-point wheel transport because all you want is the speed, but I think it's a premium that is definitely worth paying for.
Alright. That is certainly an interesting way to look at it, but I'm still going to keep the tract.
Yeah, no, it's not like taking them in tract is suddenly going to make them useless or something.
Right.
That's my line of thinking.
Alright, that's a good line of thinking. Shall we go to the support tab?
Yep.
Alright, so first off is I got plenty of AA in this deck. The first thing I got is 2 cards of ITO 90s. ITO 90s, because they are, well, they're better than the HQ 7s.
I have the HQ7, but I think it's mainly because I didn't realize the ITO 90 wasn't a prototype and it is actually accessible in the deck. So hang on, let me switch that quickly out.
Haha! I've gotten you the switching unit this time. Yep. Yeah, ITO 90s, they have 8 missiles instead of 4, and if we compare, they even have longer range against aircraft. The only thing different is the ITO 90s do have a longer reload time, but I mean,
that's not really an issue because it's after they shot 8 of their missiles, whereas the HQ7, it's really no argument for the HQ7 really.
Yeah. Also, they are faster speed and basically almost double autonomy, so you don't need to fuel these guys up very much.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you noticed in my infantry tab, I didn't actually have any AA squads, no FJBs or anything like that, so I actually got ITO's 86s. And because these guys, looking at their model, it looks like they've got 2 Igla missiles stacked up, so they can fire 2 Iglas quickly, one after the other. They're fast, they can get into position pretty well, and fairly accurate for 25 points, and I just thought, I'll take them.
Yeah. I think these little units are often underestimated.
Yeah, I believe so too.
Yeah, but for considering how cheap they are, you can really cover a lot of ground with it, and they're very, unlike manpads, they're very, very mobile as well. Obviously, you can't get them into towns or in forest patches and as closely up to the front line, but it can still be very, very hard to deal with for your opponent because you may have so many on the field.
Yeah, that's what I'm counting on. And also, for my final unit card, I've got the best mortar that the Redfor seems to have is the Pram. What do you think?
Yep, totally agree.
All right, what did you get?
Well, I got the I-290 as well now, one card up with it.
All right.
And for my second AA piece, I got the OSA AKM or the Polish Romb or whichever version you prefer. One card downwetted. It's just, I really, really like the OSA line, especially the 65 points one. It's so versatile, it's so strong. It's very, very affordable. You know, even it's like, unlike the Roland or a book, it performs still very, very well against helicopters, and on top of that, it's very mobile. It's just even if I were to only run one card of AA, one card of OSA AKMs will usually do that job in a team game. That's very, very useful to have.
I'm
Then I also have the.
I'm not seeing the OSAs. Are you talking about the ROM?
The Romb is an OSA.
Okay. Okay.
But I
Just get me there for a
wasn't
second.
sure. Okay, there's only the Romb is the only OSA that's actually available. Sometimes I forget about that. I usually just take the first OSA that appears in the slot when I take OSAs. So yeah.
All right. Yeah, the ROM is definitely fairly good. Now that I know that 7 HE power when it crits does kill a plane one hit. So yeah, doesn't have quite the range of a buck, but it's still pretty deadly and amphibious.
It is cheaper, amphibious, and faster, and still decent range against helicopters allows it to also do the same purpose. Because going against helicopters with books is always a bit awkward because they're higher, expensive, quote unquote, big units that the enemy sometimes always goes with their RT4, and the ROMs just also. Just 65 points, again, faster, can go after helicopters easier. And it's not a huge deal should you lose it while going after a helicopter and closer to the front line or something.
Yeah. All right. And did you get a pram for border support?
I did get a pram, and I also got the Chinese BM-24 MLRS truck thing. It's the only one of the BM-24s that actually has HE rockets. Everything else has napalm, useless napalm. And the BM-24 is actually it short. So it's just, I think, in my opinion, just after the cutoff of useful MLRS, like 8 HE onwards is like actually useful, and 7 HE, like the BM-21 Grad, is usually just doesn't really do anything. But the BM-24, even though it only has 12 missiles, it is surprisingly effective, and it's also very cheap. So if you get 2 of them, it's 100 points, a bit less than a euro again, but can basically do the same job. And considering that it has much shorter range, it also means it has a lower minimum range. Means you can get it closer to the front line, meaning that the enemy has less time to react to those missiles, as opposed to you firing a Eurogun from your base, for example, which you can see very early on and possibly react and move your units out of the area of effect. And considering I'm bringing a FOB, it's not really an issue of resupplying them. The biggest downside of them is they have 30 seconds aim time.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to add is that the benefit of having these guys so close to the front line as well is that dispersion gets mighty small, and when you have 8 HE rockets, a very small dispersion.
Yeah, sure, but sometimes you don't even want the small dispersion, because sometimes it's more useful to actually stun or just panic as many units as possible as opposed to kill a few. Because you don't always know where exactly the units are, so if you can just panic everything and then roll over, it's sometimes or often safer than trying to go for a very small AoE and potentially killing some units, whereas then the units around might not be panicked at all.
It depends upon your target. If you can get all the buildings in the small dispersion, you're golden, and you can possibly kill some stuff.
Yep, I did kill a Leopard 2F5 before with the BM-24.
And all the more reason.
Exactly. But that's it for my support tab.
All right, and I listed my support tab. I got extra AA, like I said, because I didn't have any infantry AA. So let's go into the most interesting department, tanks, or lack thereof.
I'm gonna start here. I have one card of tanks, and that's the Charioteer.
I have the Charioteer as well. Very good kind of 15-point support unit. 3 HE power and a 15-point tank. Yes.
And 5 front armor, making it very, very hard to deal with if the enemy uses a lot of IFVs. It's because a lot of cheap fire support often has 1 or 2 front armor, so that if the enemy spams autocannon vehicles, they can fairly easily deal with it. But 5 front armor is gonna be tough for autocannons.
Yep, definitely. I did get a few more tanks, actually, a bit for supporting my troops. I actually got the T-55 AMV. It had 11 front armor, and it had a pretty accurate gun and ATGM missile, and I decided it's a good all-arounder light medium tank, which I thought to bring in. See how well it would do. This is more of a experiment because I never really made a Redfor deck, just general Redfor deck, so this certainly would be interesting to try. And also, I got a bit more support of ZTZ-59 IIA, which is basically, if we compare that to the T-55AM, actually has a bit more power in its main gun with the stronger AP. Just doesn't have the ATGM and as much front armor. But the reason why I also picked these tanks, they also have medium optics, so they're less reliant on recon. But when I say less, I don't mean that you could just send them off with no recon. It's just that if they find themselves without a recon, they're more likely to spot something and try to shoot it before they die.
Yeah, well, I saved my 4 activation points in that case because all my actual tanks are in the recon tab.
Yep. I actually have tanks in the recon tab too, so we'll just head on over.
2 cards of the finished recon T-55.
Oh, I didn't realize we could take 2. How did I overlook that?
Yeah, exactly. At first I didn't even realize that I could take it at all when I built the deck the first time. But it's just when you compare to the T-55 AMV for 5 points more, you get 2 more AP, you get 1 step more on your range on your main gun, which is massive. It is definitely worth a lot more than just 1 AP, let's say. You have better optics, you have medium stealth, which is easily worth sacrificing 1 front armor and 2 side armor for, and that back and top armor as well, I guess. If you put it in a bush, it's going to be such a strong defensive tool in keeping your tank alive in many situations. Losing the Bastion, in my opinion, not really a big deal because the Bastion isn't particularly great, honestly. 17 AP isn't going to do too much against tanks. It's not particularly accurate, and the range is decent, but I don't mind losing that. And the T-55 recon tank is just one, in my opinion, the best recon tank outside of the M84N, which is in its own league. So yeah.
I think I'm going to knock out that AMV for another one of these. I just need to work the points around to make sure I can get this in because I'm kind of close to maxing out on my recon. Yeah. I've got 2 cards of infantry. I've got Li Ren because they are a good frontline infantry, shock trained, nice AP power, even though slightly inaccurate RPG. But they've got pretty good light machine gun and regular gun, as well as I got them in the ZZC. Good recon truck for a little bit extra recon goodness.
Yep.
And I also got the Spetsnaz VMF in KA-29 TBs, which I finally show that I have them as well. And these are guys that just to sneak around behind to see what the enemy has without any risk of being shot at. And basically be sneaky, you don't see me kind of guys.
Yeah, well, I have the Liran as well, but in the 5-point truck, just to keep him cheap. Mm-hmm. And then, as my last card, I just have the standard MI2 40-point Riken Chopper. I suppose I could use the 55 points cheaper one for Finland if I wanted to, because although it's slower, just to have like some sort of aerial optics. Mostly just for the opener to see where the enemy is gonna push, but I just didn't really feel the need to put anything specific else in there. I could put in a second infantry squad instead, but I don't think I'm gonna need those very much anyway. So.
Alright, well, I did get to finish Alouette 2. They are slightly slower, but they have more autonomy, and I just thought, since these MI2s seems to be taken out a lot more, they'll take it out for 5 points less. My line of reasoning. Yep.
Yeah, it's not really a big deal anyway.
All
5
right.
points is not a huge deal, and the little speed is also not a huge deal.
Yeah. All right. Vehicle tab. Did you get any?
1. I got the SO-76 Hellcat.
SO-76 Hellcat.
10 points Yugoslav unit.
Oh, interesting.
Not necessarily needed, really, because I have the Charioteer and the Tank tab, but I didn't really feel like taking anything else. The only other thing that I might consider is taking the 40-point Finnish ITAU XA180. I prefer it over the Conqueror's M-Track because the ITAU is mainly more accurate. The Sturm is not particularly great, even though it has more range, but it again not that accurate. But all in all, most of these vehicles aren't just particularly great, so it doesn't really matter as much. I think the main reason I have the Hellcat is because I had 1 point left, I assume.
Well, I'll finish your thought for you is the fact that I have no vehicles.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. You don't really miss out on much.
Nope. All right, helicopters.
Neither are you gonna lose out much on helicopters.
Right, there's not very many. Yeah.
Yeah, I just took 1 card of the Mi-25. It's not the greatest, but the rockets can be useful sometimes, and
I picked it for that exact reason.
It's a bit like, it's basically like the Mi-24D, but instead of the shitty rocket pods, they get those huge ass rockets.
Yeah. But they don't get the veterancy of my Spetsnaz. That's the only problem.
That is true. That's the main thing.
Yeah. I will only bring in the Mi-24D when I'm bringing in them elite trained.
Yeah, it's really a significant difference.
All right, then let's get to the aircraft. Now, playing this, I realized I had quite a bit to deal with helicopters in the support tab. I didn't have a whole lot to deal with aircraft. So I actually got 2 cards of air superiority fighters. I've got the MiG-29 from Poland because they've got longer range Vimpel missiles with 6 HE power and pretty accurate missiles, long range and short range. And then I also got the Soviet Su-27 SK because they have
Chinese, not Soviet.
Yeah, Chinese. Sorry, sorry. Red flag. And I'm just like narrow-minded looking in. At a distance, it's like the stars and the sickle and hammer in the same spot.
Oh. I remember having tons of issues in earlier Dragon, trying to keep the Chinese and Soviet SE-27s planes apart, because when you're in the middle of a fight and you only have a quick glance at the flag on the unit card, it's so easy to confuse them.
Yeah.
And it still is the case.
Yeah. But yeah, I got those 2 as air superiority fighters, so I've got 4 air superiority to basically make sure to keep planes away from my ground troops. Also, I filled out a navy. I know you probably haven't. And when I have ships, and given that Blue 4 tends to spam anti-ship planes, I wanted to have extra aircraft just so I could help defend them better as well, in case I get into those Navy maps, however rare that's probably going to be. And then I got Sierra 30s. They seem to be the best anti-tank plane available. And someone told me that TV guidance missile planes tend to dive at their target, making them a bigger target. I don't know. I think Vulcan may have told me that.
Some people like to turn off the missiles and wait until the plane tries to engage the target with the main gun, because it obviously can, in theory, still attack it with a gun, so it keeps on diving and getting closer. And roughly shortly before it starts shooting with the gun, they're gonna turn on the missiles again. So the missile's gonna get shot out when you're much closer to the ground target, and you have obviously increased accuracy due to the accuracy scaling. Obviously, it's gonna make you, or it's a lot more risky because you dive a lot deeper into the enemy air defense net. So I've tried it as well a lot of times, but sometimes it feels like it doesn't really do much. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure it does do something though, but it's very risky, and it's also very micro-intensive because we have to keep watching the plane.
Yeah, I'm just going to let those missiles go and let the Sierra 30 go away.
Most of the time, just also the safer option.
Yeah. And then finally, I decided to get the Avia 28. because sometimes you just want to see a small city not exist anymore.
You don't have your air tab filled out?
No, but that might change a bit. I'm gonna have to work some things around to get the double recon.
I mean, you get 2 slots of planes that cost 1. That you have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
yeah.
Okay, so what I have is first. Well, I also have the polished MiG-29 on Elite. Then instead of the SE-27 SK, I have the East German MiG-29, because the main thing with the SE-27 SK is it comes at if you just compare it with the polished MiG-29, it comes at the same veterancy. All the missiles have 10% less accuracy.
Yeah.
And all you get is 2 more long-range missiles, which most of the time doesn't matter at all, because you can only fire the next one after the first one hit or missed. So more than 2 is most of the time not necessary, because rarely will you engage multiple planes after one another in the same run.
Alright.
So I got the East German MiG-29 instead, and fire and forget missiles, so the long-range missiles can be very useful sometimes. Then I have 2 cards of the B5.
Oh, of course you did.
Then also the SE-22 M4 Syria 30. Then the East German SE-22 M4, it's not the greatest, but it's still 230 AP missiles, even though they're semi-active. But the next best anti-tank plane you can get, or the second anti-tank plane period you are possible to get. I don't think there's any. I suppose there's the North Korean cluster plane, but yeah, it's not the greatest, but it can sometimes do the job. And considering we don't have any actual medium or heavy tanks, kind of necessary. And then last but not least, I have the Soviet SE-24. Considering that the deck really somewhat relies as well on a lot of planes, especially against tanks, having a seaplane, trying to keep those planes alive is going to be very, very helpful and very needed, I think.
Alright, yeah, I definitely see your reasoning. I am going over this in my mind, and I think in the logistics tab, I'm going to take out the SA-150s and just keep the MTB LBs because they're amphibious. Yeah, they're slightly worse on supply, but I'm just trying to figure out the points better. I kind of heed your advice. I think I need to get a few more planes here because I am kind of lacking in an advantage on using the planes tab. The AMV also is going to go away. So now I have 5 extra points. That's only 2 more planes.
Well, the 2 B5s that I'm using are mostly for shits and giggles.
Yeah, shock and awe. I picked the Avia 28 mainly so I could get 2 of them. They're not as big an explosion, but they're still pretty damn big. And I thought, they'll do the job. As the
that's
B5.
perfectly fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like the way that you. I kind of like a bit of on your role on the seed, and when you were saying that about the seed, what came to my mind actually was the sheer fact that the ships that I might be fighting against, because I'm also bearing in mind ships, but being a Marine deck you don't have to play with ships or not, is that the seed missiles can also be effective against ships, and I've lately gotten quite adept at having the plane circle around and just firing the missiles well out of the range of the ships to be able to counterattack, and seed missiles do not trigger the countermeasures or interception missiles.
Yeah.
So I think I like that. And for the last card here, which I can get another, the Yak-38 with the napalm bombs might be fun. What do you think on that?
I'm thinking that low speed, no ECM is gonna make it die without dropping its bombs.
And thus the Raz has spoken.
Yeah, that's the same reason why I didn't take the. It's not even. Never mind, it's not even in the deck. Oh, right, it was a check deck. But yeah, the low speed is gonna make it very easy to intercept. Like if it gets spotted, most of the time the enemy has still a lot of time to react. get out the ASF before the Yak is gonna drop its bombs, and the low ECM is gonna mean that most of the time the first 2 missiles, either of AA or ASF, will just instantly hit and kill it.
All right. Well, I also got rid of that extra tank in my tank department and got the 2 cards of T55Ms because I didn't realize I could get 2 when I made this deck, and I'm allowed to make changes when I realize my folly. So, I've made the changes to the deck. I don't know if you want me to go over my Navy tab, or you could just say I don't care.
Well, most of these names won't really give me an idea what they are. I never know what the Sovereign and the Udaloi are, and that's about it.
Okay. I'll just briefly go over. I got 2 cards of Jangu 3s. They're the 160-point ships. They've got basically the same range of the, well, slightly less range than a Sovereign or Udaloi. They're basically many of those ships, but still very good close-in weapon systems. I got Tranquil 3s, which have the same range as the Udaloi and Sovereign. I also got Nanushkas, which have a pretty decent kind of air intercept of missiles, with their OSA Ms, as well as pretty decent on taking out enemy ships, as well as one of my favorite, their main gun is on the rear of the ship, so you basically shoot at stuff while you run away, which I find hilarious. I then got Munas for a supply, and I also got Komars, 8 rookie Komars, and the reason why I picked the Komars is that they are river ships, so they can't be targeted by anti-ship planes, and they're carrying 2 Termit anti-ship missiles, so basically they charge up, no anti-ship missiles can be launched at it, they launch a huge volley of all their Termit missiles, overwhelming the enemy ship's fire support, and then they turn around and run away and resupply and do the process all over again.
Alright.
Yep, so that's how I plan to dominate the sea, which we'll never see in our game, because you're not going to be touching sea with a 10-foot pole. Nope,
not at all.
Alright, so I think that was a pretty successful going over of our Redfor Marine deck. I definitely liked your feedback. I do enjoy having another person doing these deck builds, especially someone with your experience. I definitely learned more than what I would figure out on my own, and I want to thank you for showing me around a bit.
Glad to be able to help.
Alright, so we will go around playing a game with this deck in the future, so I hope both my viewers and your viewers look forward to that.
Yep.
Alright, so I will catch you in the next episode.
Yeah, guys.